Jean-Baptiste Koehl creates these really cool animations for TED, and they each cover different aspects of the Earth and its changing plates, how the Earth moves, how these tectonic movements actually help us understand the history of the Earth and the future of the Earth. We know about continental drifts because we learn about them in grade school when we study a little bit about geology, but I don't think I've ever really looked at it from the perspective of what happens over these millions of years in terms of what's released and what is contained. Gases are released, heat is contained, there's mass extinctions, plates are colliding. It's a lot of information, but the relevance of all this, I think, has to do with when things move and shift, do gases release, and are we scared of those gases now, or should we be worried for 50 million years from now? I think the difference between myself and geologists is that a geologist looks at life in a whole different time frame. So today I want to speak with Jean-Baptiste about the work he does and how he looks at it across the sort of the axis of time, but what drives him on a day-to-day basis. Jean-Baptiste has a PhD in this work, and I feel like his ability to make geology, the study of geology, accessible to us is really shown in the videos he produces. They're wonderful. And today we're walking the Earth not aware of its movements on a day-to-day basis, but I did live in Northern California for 18 years, and I was always worried about earthquakes. And now that I live in Southern California, I still think about earthquakes. But earthquakes are little teeny things compared to the big shifts. And I guess we're looking at different ways of seeing the Earth through different lenses. So I guess I want to start there. Jean-Baptiste, thank you for being here on Swell, and thank you for being such a great educator as well as scientist, because sometimes big concepts are hard to understand, but your work, especially the animations you create, really help build a bridge between the layperson and the expertise of your work. Can you build a bridge for us right now to set a stage for this conversation? Where would you like to meet us? Is it in the space of environmentalism, where we can understand the importance of the movement of the Earth with reference to gases that are released? Or is it more an appreciation of what might happen in 50 million years? I just want to know where we can start with this conversation and what helps you kind of understand the connection between small movement and big movement. I think that can help us look at modern day situations versus the big events that happened over the past 250 million years. Thanks for helping ground this conversation.
Hi, thank you very much for having me on Swell today, and thanks a lot for your interest in the videos. First, bouncing back to what you said about living in California, there's lots of seismicity in the north, as you said, and it is because the San Andreas Fault is creeping. It is smoothly allowing the two tectonic plates to slide past one another, while in Southern California, potential asperities or irregularities along the fault surface, potentially less planar fault surface, does not allow such a smooth sliding, and therefore the fault becomes locked and stress builds up, and that might lead to one day a violent rupture and a major earthquake. So there's still a lot of potential for major earthquakes in Southern California. Regarding the time frames at which I do geology, first, to study processes like the San Andreas Fault, I would say thousands to a few million years. So, as I said, for recent processes like the San Andreas Fault and a few recent earthquakes, but also for gas release in the Arctic along cracks in the earth crusts, for example, or the melting of glaciers in the ice cap, which is now destabilizing gases, greenhouse gases that were frozen into the ground, into gas hydrates, and they are now the melting of the ice cap is changing the pressure temperature condition in the ground and allowing these gases to be released into the atmosphere. So that's something that is nicely shown in the Ice on Fire documentary of Leonardo DiCaprio, in which we see scientists, notably of the University of Tromsø, the Cage Center and the Seamstress project there, trying to figure out what's happening and where we're headed. And the other scale and the other time frame is from tens of million years to hundreds of million years, or billion years even, and these are the cycles of supercontinents, where continents are accreted together into major continents, supercontinents, or rifted apart, like at present. Plate collide, plate are rifted apart, and this is important. Well, first of all, to know where we're headed, if there's still human life on Earth a few hundreds million years from now, but also for planetary habitability and the suitability of a planet or a moon to host life, for example. But really, the processes that are acting at those two different time scales are intertwined. For example, they're deeply connected. For example, there's the Arctic project financed by the EU Commission that recently found thousands of kilometer long faults or cracks in the Earth's crust in the Arctic. They stretch from Russia to Norway and Svalbard and perhaps Greenland, and that means at least twice longer than the San Andreas Fault. They're massive, and these cracks formed about 600 million years ago during a major cycle of continental accretion. But they also are still active at present and are responsible for most of the earthquake in the Norwegian Arctic right now, and they're also responsible for gas seepage or greenhouse gases which are released in the atmosphere. So my point is, and I'm going to leave you with that, is that these changes, climate change, they're happening and will continue to happen with or without our help, with or without human impact. So what I want to say is that we might want to tune down our impact, minimize our impact on the climate, so it gives us time to see where we're headed and to adapt to the incredible changes that we're going to experience in the years to come. Thanks a lot.
Jean-Baptiste, thank you so much for being here and for answering my questions and for giving us such a sort of a perspective on how big this conversation can be. And you mentioned in the end about things happening regardless of the impact of humans, which leads me to this other question. And I know that I'd love people to know how to ask you questions, because this is such a big world that you traverse, literally and figuratively. And it's hard for people to know in their 85 years of living what they should be concerned about. And you brought up climate change with regard to greenhouse gases being released. What would you like the average individual to think about with relationship to the movement of the Earth? And I ask this because I think it'll help people understand how they fit into the picture in their small lifespan. Can you help us chunk all this back to what an individual needs to understand, what they can do, if anything, and where you think there is an intersection between people's behaviors, their civic participation, and the work you're doing? Where is that connection so that people could feel a part of the conversation and understand their link in the chain? Because when it's something as so big and vast as this study, it's hard for people to relate. But that's my goal, is to help us relate and understand these shifts and how we are part of it and what we can do, if anything, to mitigate things that are happening that are not good for the planet. So thanks for navigating this with us. I really appreciate it.